And now, another Rock Sports Network presentation.
And what a morning it is out here on the quad. Picture perfect Saturday afternoon here at Disney. Yeah!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Yozone Football Show. I'm Brendan McDaniels alongside former Syracuse wide receiver Andre Fontenette and former – wait.
I don't know what happened to him, man. He's not responsible. He's not responsible enough to be here.
We are pretty sure Jamil has still not regained consciousness after falling out of his chair in disbelief at the end of the Syracuse game. We're going to talk all about it tonight. We got a lot to talk about. If you want to join us on Facebook Live, give us a comment. We'll read it on the air. We'll talk about it. Any questions, comments you have on a great Syracuse football win. We're excited to talk about it. We want to remind you that the show is brought to you by Thurman Thomas's 34 Rush at Batavia Downs, where things are hopping every night with over 30 HD screens, including a 15-foot main screen, food and drink specials, live music on select weekends. Be sure to check out facebook.com/Batavia Downs for more information on special events and promotions. Andre,
That's me.
49-6 victory for Syracuse. It was a game that there was never a time in this game where you thought Syracuse wasn't going to win or could not win. And we saw a lot of things in this game. We saw them run the ball quite a bit, 43 times for almost 300 yards.
Finally.
We saw 3 turnovers, producing 21 points off of those turnovers. And the biggest margin of victory against an FBS team since the year 2000. So, the obvious first question, how did this happen?
Well, I think the turning point in the game was about the start of the second quarter. Syracuse is up 14-6, and Syracuse defensive back, my boy, my favorite DB at SU, number 7, Andre Cisco, had a huge pick six. That separated us from them and made it a 2-score game. He had a 48-yard interception return for a touchdown, and that just busted it wide open. I mean, we were already ahead. We had already scored twice early on. Our tight end scored. The receiver scored on a nice touchdown pass from DeVito. But when Andre Cisco intercepted that pass, it was like the floodgates started opening. The offense started playing a little bit more swag. The defense started flying around a little faster, and it was just great to see them finally play a full game, offense, defense, and special teams, finally all together at one time, not just offense and then defense doesn't play well or vice versa. It's so fun and healthy to see them finally compete and do what their coach should do and do exactly what Coach Babers brought them to Syracuse to accomplish.
Well, you're right, and that was a pivotal point because it was 14-6 early in the third quarter. At that point, they get 3 straight turnovers. They score off of each one of those turnovers, and in about 8 minutes' time, you went from 14-6 to 35-6,
right,
and then you knew it was over from there. But even in the first half, Syracuse went up 14-0. Duke got a couple field goals in the second quarter. You go into halftime, it's 14-6. But even at that point, I never got the feeling like that Duke was in this game or they were on the same level as Syracuse. And I don't think that we've had that feeling at any point this season, even against some of the cupcakes that they played earlier this year.
Yeah, but it's still I don't care how you slice it. Duke is a basketball school. There's no reason. Before the game even started, I felt like, there's just no excuse and no reason to lose to a team of Duke's stature. I wasn't surprised by the outcome. I predicted that they would win. I wasn't here. We weren't here last week, but I did. I promise you, I predicted that SU would win. And they just finally did what they were supposed to do. And most importantly, thank goodness, their first ACC win of the season. It was much needed.
And it was, and it shot some life into this team. And what was interesting is that afterwards, when they were talking to the players in the locker room, they all used the same word. And it's not a word that you would think of.
It wasn't Ohana?
No.
Okay.
The word that they used was different. It was different. It felt different. It was some derivative of different. And obviously we know one of the big differences, they fired their defensive coordinator.
Yep.
They promoted their linebackers coach to come in and be the defensive coordinator, Steve Stannard.
Yep.
They changed a couple guys on the offensive line. They put in a new center. They moved their center to left tackle. But it seemed like it was more than just those personnel moves. So what, in fact, was different?
Well, I can tell you right now it was different. As I look at the stats, the number one thing that was different for me is they rushed the ball 43 times. We've been calling for Coach Babers and this offense to give Mo Neal the ball, give Jarvion the ball, let these running backs and let the offensive line do what they do best. They can't pass protect. Let them run the football, establish the run, and then if you have to throw the ball, throw the ball. They only threw it 15 times, but they established the run. Real quick, we'll talk stats. Mo Neal, 17 carries, over 100 yards rushing, 115 yards. He averaged 6.8 yards per carry. When's the last time you saw a Division I running back, especially from Syracuse, average 6.8 yards per carry after 15 carries? I think that's impressive. Jarvion Howard, although most of his carries came in the fourth quarter when the game was already out of hand for Duke, he had 9 carries, 115 yards, 1 touchdown, 12.8 yards per carry. The first time in years that Syracuse had, at least the first time this year, Syracuse has had 2 rushers for over 100 yards. It's exactly what the recipe called for. This is the game that they needed. It was different, but it was different because they established the run game, and it's something they hadn't done all year long.
Another thing a lot of the players talked about, and Tristan Jackson mentioned this too, he said before the game, he said it felt like Little League. He said when I got out on the field and I got on the grass and I started bumping around, moving around, he goes, it felt like I was back in Michigan playing Little League. And a lot of guys commented that they felt that things were simpler.
Well, that I think that just comes from coaching. You got a new defensive coordinator. Coach Standard got in there and did exactly what he was supposed to do, what he wanted his kids to do. They're flying around. He finally got some defensive line pressure, some consistent defensive line pressure, because they've had some decent defensive line play all year round. They won the turnover battle. They got let me make sure they had 4 total turnovers, 2 fumbles, 2 interceptions, and Syracuse sacked their offense 4 separate times as well. So Coach Standard and the defense, it was huge. Finally, the offense established the run, but then it was also great to see the defense get back to their old selves like they were last year and at the very, very beginning of this year. I think the coaching change was needed, and I think that was certainly effective.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at some of these sacks, you mentioned the 4 sacks and the turnovers, 8 tackles for a loss, 8 passes defended, 5 quarterback hurries in addition to those sacks. They had guys out there on the defense making plays, and they seem like a different defense. And obviously, they're going to look a little bit different because they had a different defensive coordinator. But these are the same guys who gave up 500,000 points to a terrible Maryland team.
Right.
They gave up 500,000 points to a not so good Boston College offense. It's the same guys out there, and a lot of them said that the biggest change was they simplified things. They let them go out and just play. Use your talent, use your athleticism, use your speed, use your instincts. And Dino Babers, here's a comment from Dino Babers after the game. He said, I felt the game was a little bit simpler and we had some success. I think the main thing is that we kind of limited some complexities and let the guys really play instead of trying to be perfect. We let energy and enthusiasm cover some things instead of trying to be exactly right.
Yeah, and again, I think that Coach Standard certainly delivered on that aspect. There wasn't so many checks on defense. You didn't see linebackers adjusting the motions. You didn't see safeties changing the defensive coverage. You saw guys flying to the ball. You saw 11 hats to the ball. You saw them trying to punt. Even when they didn't cause a turnover, you could see them trying to cause a turnover. You saw the defensive line in the quarterback's face. When they didn't get there, they're getting their hands up in the air, making the quarterback have to find throwing lanes or throw it awkward, and that's where the interceptions led to. Just quarterback play, trying to get rid of the ball quickly, and the defensive line still finding a way to get home. So it was a great day to be Orange. I mean, it was great to see the defense finally show up. And special shout out Mr. Williams, 14 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. He had 1 sack. Kendall Coleman, 7 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 2.5 TFLs, 1.5 sacks for Kendall Coleman. The defensive line finally showed up again for SU, and I think it has everything to do with, like you said, playing fast, not really having to think about what do I have, what's my assignment. You know what? Let's keep it simple. You beat the guy in front of you, find a way to get past him, make a play on defense, and that's exactly what they did all day long.
And that's really something that we were expecting to see from them all year, because when we went into this, into the season back in August, and we all sat down as a collective group and we said, you know what, this offense isn't the greatest.
Mhm.
The offense is going to struggle.
And the
They're gonna-
quarterback's young,
The
right?
quarterback's young. They're going to be maybe a 17 to 20 point game offense. The defense needs to carry them, and we thought the strength of this team was the defense.
Mhm.
And we thought that one game of the season after Liberty, they shut Liberty out. We said this is a team that's going to rely on their defense. Then they had that 63-point hiccup against Maryland. And then really the month of October was a lost month with NC State, Pittsburgh, Florida State, Boston
Ugh,
College.
I hate the
But
name Boston College.
they got back to the right side.
Mhm.
And it's from those. Sometimes you just have to be simplistic. You don't have to overcomplicate things. Just tell these guys you are athletically better than them.
Mhm.
You know, they told the defensive line, you guys athletically are better than their offensive line. Go out there and show it. They said to the linebackers, you guys can run down their running backs. Go do it.
Correct.
They told the DBs, you guys are better than their wide receivers.
cover
go
them.
out. You can cover them. You can go out do it. And you saw the results. And we just mentioned the tackles for loss, the pass deflections, the interceptions, the fumble recovers,
Mhm.
the whole 9 yards. They did what they're asked to do, but what they're asked to do was very easy. Just be better than the guy across.
Well, if you remember 3 weeks ago, we sat here in this studio and we said, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And obviously I'm not calling Coach Babers or anybody stupid, but KISS, keep it simpler. The more simple you keep it, don't give the guys too much direction and on the field. It allows them to play faster, allows them to communicate a little bit easier, and it allows them to play with confidence. And as soon as they had a chance to play with confidence, you saw them flying all around the field. This ain't basketball. This is football town. This is football season. We're here to beat Duke every single time.
At least for another week, it's a football
That's
time.
right.
We've got a lot more Ozone coming up. We're going to break down Louisville, let you know how Syracuse stacks up against them. We're also going to talk a little bit more about this game and what went so well. Also, we want to hear from you. If you're watching us on Facebook Live, please give us a comment, question. Andre will be happy to answer it. Please restrict your McQuaid night questions. The coach over here is a little insufferable right now because they won a regional championship.
Yeah, about to win a
We-
state championship,
We're
too.
gonna, we'll give him another shout out at the end of the show.
Thank
but
you.
Please keep him to Syracuse questions. Please help my conscience right here. Want to remind you that the Ozone is brought to you by Bob Johnson Chevrolet. Bob Johnson's goal is to give you the best deal on the best new or used vehicle possible. If you're not sure what you're looking for in a new car, truck, or SUV, stop by and talk with their expert sales team, and you'll help figure out which model fits your needs and requirements best. Bob Johnson Chevrolet, Ridge Road West in Greece. We'll be back right after this on the Ozone Football Show.
Hi, my name is Henry, and I want to welcome you to Batavia Downs Gaming. We want you to love it, not just like it here. We went to our customers and asked them what we can do better. You said you wanted a hotel, so we built one. More and better food, we did that too. A separate place to smoke and play, we even did that. Batavia Downs Gaming and Hotel is the right size with the right people in the right location. Batavia Downs Gaming. Come here to dine, stay, and play.
Bill Gray's newest tap room at the Port is now open. Relax and enjoy the river view with friends and family. Domestic, imported, and locally brewed craft beer at Bill Gray's Tap Room, now at the Port of Rochester.
Bill Gray.
Hi, I'm Zach Ralph. We've been selling cars for more than 80 years. We're family owned, family run, 3 generations strong.
Come see the 2020 Hondas. There's something for every lifestyle.
Whatever you're looking for in your next car, you'll find it at Ralph Honda.
Back on the Ozone Football Show, Brendan McDaniels, Andre Fontenette, Jamil Dumas. Still cannot believe the outcome of this game. He was not able to make it.
Where
in
you at,
time.
Jay? Where you at?
We're hoping to see him next week, though. Want to remind you that we are brought to you by Lattimore Physical Therapy and Sports Rehab. Lattimore currently offers 25 clinics throughout the Rochester area, including nearby locations in Pittsford and Webster. More than 50 certified physical therapists have experience in treating most conditions and sports injuries, and in most cases are able to offer initial consultations within 24 hours for your convenience. LattimorePT.com. So, Andre, we mentioned a couple different moving parts, and one of the big ones, defensive tackle McKinley Williams.
Mm-hmm.
They hadn't seen him all year. He got injured. He's been out since August. Again, another shot to that defense. You were able to bring more talent in and get him back on his feet, and you've got him for the last 2 games coming back.
14 tackles in the game. He made immediate impact in the game. I mean, he came in and started getting quarterback pressures, started clogging up the middle so they couldn't run the ball, forcing him into throwing situations, and McKinley still found a way to get to the quarterback and make pressure. So it was a great time to have him back. It was much needed. for the defense, and I think it was a point for the defense to kind of rally around somebody. You know, now you got a new defensive coordinator and you got one of your best defensive linemen back in the mix of things. So I think they took full advantage of that, and I think they jumped on the leadership bandwagon of McKinley Williams, and it led him to have 14 tackles. And on top of that, he just had multiple quarterback pressures in order to help cause some of these turnovers, and at the same time, just get the defense's confidence back up.
Well, and speaking of getting your confidence back up and looking forward, this is an offensive line that has, let's be honest, they have struggled, just struggled all year long. So Aaron Service had been playing center. He had been struggling. They moved him back to left tackle, which is more of a natural position for him. Carlos Vetrollo moved to center. The offensive line seemed a lot more stable. And you mentioned this is a team that is not strong in the pass rush, but they focused on the run game, and this offensive line had success.
Yeah, I think it was all about the offensive line finally. It didn't have to be about Tommy DeVito and his lack of production or Mo Neal and his lack of carries. I think this game was all about offensive line play, positive offensive line play for Syracuse. There was 43 rushing attempts for Syracuse. I want to say that was the most amount all season long. 43 times they tried to rush the ball. And on top of that, the offense caused 0 turnovers. So anytime you can turn the ball over for the other team and then not turn it over yourself, at the same time, you're running the ball 43 times in the game. That means the clock is running. You're keeping their defense off the field. And then when they get on the field, you're keeping their offense off the field. And then when they get on the field, you're turning it over and pressuring them. So I think that it was all about the defense and all about the offensive line play. And it was great to see 0 turnovers. Tommy DeVito didn't have to throw the ball. They didn't have to rely on Tommy DeVito to throw the ball. He only threw it 15 times. And he played well. He threw it over 100 yards, threw 2 touchdown passes. I thought it was great, but I think it all started up front. And I think that it was great to see them finally reestablish themselves in the run, make some changes, like you said. You might have to move the center to tackle. You got to figure out a way to put your best 5 offensive linemen, your best 5 eligible players in terms of eligible receivers and running backs on the field, no matter if they play center, guard, or tackle. They got to be on the field. That's what Coach Babers and his staff decided to do, and it led to obvious, quick, solid results. I love it.
And you mentioned not only the 43 rushes, but they carried the ball 43 times for an average of 6.7 yards per carry.
They dominated.
So it's not like it was 2.8 yards per carry, 3 yards. They averaged almost 7 yards per rush, and they produced 4 touchdowns out of the running game.
Yeah, they looked like what Alabama looks like against everybody else in the country. Now I know they were playing against Duke; it's not the same thing, but it was great to just see the run game being established, and it's great to see Syracuse get back to what Syracuse has traditionally been known for since the 80s, since the 70s: running the football, stopping the run, making tackles, great offensive line play. It was great.
Now let's get back to that sequence in the third quarter that we mentioned. Andre Cisco gets the 48-yard interception return for a touchdown. In that sequence, in about an 8-minute sequence, Syracuse had created 3 turnovers. They had 2 interceptions, forced a fumble, and a fumble recovery. But they created 21 points off of those turnovers, and that's another big thing in the game. One thing is to get turnovers, but the other thing is to get points off of them. Obviously, the first one is easy. Andre Cisco returns it to the house for the touchdown.
Right.
But the second interception and the first fumble recovery, the offense turned those into 7 points each. So you got 21 points off of 3 turnovers. So it's the offense helping out the defense after they did a great job.
We've told the story before. I'm going to tell it again. In 2001, Syracuse, we ended up going 10-3. I think I was a sophomore. Jameel was a junior. And we ended up going 10-3. We finished 12th in the country. But the reason why we did so well is because we had Dwight Freeney, and nobody else did. So every single third down, the first third down of the drive, Dwight Freeney would go around the edge, and he'd get a strip sack, you know what I mean? Or he'd get a sack, and he'd force them into a turnover. And we'd start the drive on the plus 50, 2, 3, sometimes 4 times in one game. Imagine a football game where the offense has a chance, is in scoring position 3 or 4 times from their first play of the drive. And that's exactly what the Syracuse defense did for the offense this week. They established themselves quickly, and they got early turnovers in the game, and it just allowed, obviously, it's a field position game, but it's most important to turn turnovers and turn those turnovers into points, and that's exactly what they did. And it would have been such a shame if they weren't able to get into the red zone and only get 3 points. No. They finally got all the way in the end zone. They didn't have to rely on Andre Schmidt to kick. They got in the end zone themselves, and it was finally refreshing to see them finally just finish drives. Take advantage of other teams' mishaps instead of teams taking advantage of their mishaps. Syracuse took full advantage of all the turnovers all game long, and it was great to see the defense flying around.
So now the important question is,
Give it to me.
why couldn't they do this all year? We mentioned the first segment about what was different, but from a bigger picture standpoint, okay, Duke came in as the favorite.
Yep.
Duke's playing at home. Duke had some success. They had a couple wins under the belt. They had a couple good ACC wins. So how is it that a Syracuse team that was supposed to go in there and get rolled came out and rolled them? And how come we didn't see this we saw a close loss to NC State. We saw a one-score loss to Pittsburgh. We saw a semi-competitive game against Florida State.
First half.
First half. We saw an annihilation by Boston College. What was the difference between this Duke game and the month of October where they just couldn't seem to get out of their own way?
Well, I thought it was interesting what Coach Cutcliffe said in his post-game press, that they couldn't get totally prepared for the game like they would normally do. With the new defensive coordinator, Coach Standard got in there, and they made so many changes on defense and dumbed the defense down that it allowed them to play fast. And Duke was, and like I said, Coach Cutcliffe said this, they weren't totally prepared for what Syracuse was going to do because they didn't know. Syracuse had a new defensive coordinator. Their defense all of a sudden is playing with emotion, running around the field, flying around the field. But with all this new stuff going on, these coaches spend so much time day in and day out preparing for what's to come, and then all of a sudden they're in a position where they don't know exactly what's going to go on. And anytime you're trying to be perfect, perfection is never going to happen for you. You got to figure out a way to play fast, just like Syracuse did. Coach Cutcliffe said it right. They weren't prepared. That was the difference.
Well, and now you look at it, and Louisville's going to watch this tape.
Right. Now they're going to catch up.
But they're probably going to see a different defense next week than they saw against Duke. You really didn't see Tommy DeVito need to use the passing game, so there's not much that Louisville can look at out of the passing game. They're going to see a rushing offense that was pretty good. So now, even with Louisville preparing, Louisville doesn't really know what to prepare for either because this
What Syracuse team is going to show up?
What Syracuse team is going to show up? What defense is going to show up? Because this defense that we saw against Duke is not going to be the same defense that Louisville is going to see because they're going to have some different wrinkles because now that Coach Standard has seen what the kids can do under his version of the defense, now he's going to make some tweaks and hopefully make it even tougher.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, is just making small, subtle changes week in, week out. And you got to call the defense and make the offense according to the players you have. And I felt like maybe they were trying to do some things on defense that didn't really go in tune with what those players were good at. Now all of a sudden they get their defensive linemen back, and you see, and Andre Sisco's been out first half of the season, and he's finally seems like fully healthy, making big plays. And I think that was just the difference, is that just finally guys are established, finally guys are getting back. And I don't think Duke wasn't extremely prepared, but I think that Louisville now has to figure it out too, because now, like you said, which team is going to show up? Is it going to be the SU team that showed up versus Boston College, that they were able to run the ball all over them? Or is it going to be the team that got on the road, went down to North Carolina, and beat Duke? You know what I mean? It's hard to say which team, because they've been so inconsistent this year, all season long. I hope that this week's SU shows up the rest of the way through so we can go to a bowl game. But, and we're going to talk about that. But, I was just happy to see the defense flying around. And I don't even know what to expect versus Louisville, just because we've been so inconsistent. And Louisville is a team that I feel like we can beat. Should we beat them? I don't know. It's a 50-50 game. But can we beat them? Yes. If we play well, they don't have Lamar Jackson no more. They don't have Clint Hurt recruiting for them anymore. You remember Clint Hurt out of?
Oh yeah.
Clint Hurt, big name.
Yeah.
They don't have him anymore recruiting. We can win this game if we play like we played last week.
Well, we're going to talk about that Louisville game coming right up. It's Bobby Petrino's boys, but he's not there anymore.
Nope.
Last time we saw them, Bobby Petrino was coaching the team. Now it's Scott Satterfield, but he's got all those guys back. We're going to talk about that coming up and more. Also want to remind you, if you got any comments or questions for Andre, hit us up on Facebook Live. Put us a comment on there. Let me try that in proper English now. Put a comment on there, and we'll read it. We'll respond. And Andre will not get too excited about it because he's going to keep it at an even keel.
That's right.
Even though he's getting ready for a state championship coming up for his McQuaid team. But again, we're not going to talk about that. We're giving these little nuggets so we can get these out of the
right.
way. So we got all that more coming up on the Ozone Football Show coming up right after this.
If you're living with pain or recovering from surgery and don't know where to start, Lattimore Physical Therapy can help. The Lattimore Promise includes an individual diagnosis with a highly trained licensed physical therapist on your first visit, a personalized treatment plan, communication with your doctor, and a continued personal care plan. You're never more than minutes away from pain relief. Visit LattimorePT.com.
Lattimore Physical Therapy.
Only $7.99 for a Bill Gray's Great Plate every Tuesday.
Hi, I'm Steve Ralph. We've been selling cars for more than 80 years. Our best values are available right now at Ralph Honda.
Come see the 2020 Hondas. There's something for every lifestyle.
Whatever you're looking for in your next car, you'll find it at Ralph Honda.
Daddy had surgery and his pain was put to ease.
Lattimore Physical Therapy.
You'll get more for your money. You'll get much greater value. You talk to kind, courteous people who really care. They're so sincere. I recommend them to my family. I recommend them to my friends. They've gone way above and beyond my great expectations. It's Bob Johnson Chevrolet. Bob Johnson Chevrolet. Bob Johnson Chevrolet.
Back on the Ozone Football Show, Brendan McDaniels, Andre Fontenette, Jamil Dumas.
No show.
Parts unknown. We're not sure.
What's up, Jay? I know you're watching somewhere.
He's been complaining all year about us not giving any love to the defense. They finally deserve some love, and Jay can't make it.
Well,
But
I'll
Jay-
say this.
but
They
Jay,
only
we
gave
still-
up 6 points. You got to give them a
They
little
only
love.
give us Jay, we still love you. We can't wait to see you next week. The Ozone Football Show is brought to you by Bill Gray's Restaurants and Tap Room. Every Tuesday is Great Plate Tuesday at Bill Gray's, just $7.99 for 2 Bill Gray's cheeseburgers on top of home fries and mac salad, loaded with your choice of toppings, including Bill Gray's famous meat sauce. Great Plate Tuesday every Tuesday. Gimme, 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 Bill Gray's.
That's right.
Your boy Aaron and I, we went there last weekend.
It's my boy.
Oh, it's
He's one of my best friends now. Your
fantastic.
son, he's one of my favorites.
Hold on,
He's one of my favorites.
Hopefully a future Roars. We're hoping for that. We'll see. But yeah, our Great Plates were fantastic.
Yeah, I
Cheeseburger-
love
cheeseburger
Bill
mac
Gray's.
salad, home fries.
I love Bill Gray's.
Meat sauce on the side.
Yeah, meat sauce on the side. And the other thing is, you get the little coupons in the newspaper, and you go buy one get one, buy one get one half off.
Oh,
My
yeah,
dad's been doing it
cheeseburger.
for 20 years. I love it.
It's fantastic.
Gimme, Bill Gray's.
Yeah, we're gonna go watch the game at Bill. Well, he can't watch the game at Bill Gray's. We're gonna watch it on Saturday. I'm just gotta go coach a state semifinal game. But when we get into this game, Louisville, Syracuse coming in as an 8.5 point underdog. Not a surprise. Louisville became bowl eligible on Saturday night. They beat NC State. They're 6-4 overall, 4-3 in the ACC. This is a team that all these guys are Bobby Petrino guys. Bobby Petrino got bounced in the middle of last year. Scott Satterfield took over, and he's really doing a great job with this group that he has in his first season. They've got wins over Western Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky, but they beat Boston College by 2.
Syracuse lost to BC.
They beat Wake Forest by 3. It was
Syracuse
a 60
has to play Wake Forest.
62-59. They beat Virginia 28-21. And then last week it was 34-20 over NC State. And interesting, I love this call if you didn't see the Louisville NC State game. Fourth quarter, 9 minutes to go. Louisville's up 27-20. They line up for a field goal. They fake it. The ball snap, kid gets up, goes to run it. The last second gets the line of scrimmage, throws in the end zone, touchdown. They go up 34-20 with 9 minutes left. They go on to win 34-20. Gets them to be bowl eligible. It's a great story.
You cannot be
for
scared
Louisville right now
to call the trick play nowadays. I mean, Syracuse got burned by trick plays three times in a row this year, 3 games in a row, and now all of a sudden you see a team like Louisville winning games, making big plays on trick plays. I'd love to see SU try do a little razzle dazzle, something a little different in order to get the ball an easy touchdown in the end zone. I guess especially against a team like this who, like you said, has scored a lot of points throughout the season. They got to figure out something to get the ball in the end zone. You might get a cheapie just like they got a cheapie last week.
Well, it's interesting because Louisville is the best of times and the worst of times. They average 32 points a game on offense, but they give up 32.7 points on defense. So we go back to these games. The BC game was 41-39. Wake Forest was 62-59.
Yep.
They play high-scoring, close games. And that's dangerous when you play with fire like that.
Yeah, but it's dangerous when you play with fire. But at the same time, I think it's encouraging because I think of Tommy DeVito and this offense, and just like last week, they can score points in bunches. Boom, boom, boom. Next thing you know, they have 35 points. And now all of a sudden, the defense is starting to play better. So maybe, just maybe, they can put together the whole thing just like they did against Duke, score a whole bunch of points on offense, establish the run, keep their offense off the field, and then when they are on the field, have great defensive line play, have great defensive back play. And win the game and limit their points. I think we have a real opportunity to do something different to Louisville that nobody else has really done this year. Win or lose, Louisville has shown that they can score points. We got to figure it out.
And the interesting thing too is when you listen to Dino Babers' Monday morning press conference, the term that he used for their skill players, he said they're lightning fast. He said if they get out into the open field, we're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And he said we got to figure out how to contain those guys. So when you've got super fast guys that can get the ball and then move with some space in front of them, how do you stop that?
Well, it's easier said than done, of course. But again, it starts with great defensive line play. You got to figure out a way to put pressure on the quarterback and make him do some things in the pass game that he's not comfortable doing, and get the ball out of his hands quickly. The other thing is that defensive line-wise, if they can stay in their lanes and set the offensive line back a step or two, a yard or two into the backfield and reestablish the line of scrimmage, now all of a sudden you're messing with their run game as well. They got to tackle well. Okay, Louisville has some great running backs that can really run the ball when given the opportunity. And the other thing they're going to have to look out for this week, I've seen Louisville find success on screens all year round. All of a sudden, the defensive line thinks that they're just about to get to the quarterback, and he drops it right over them on a screen. So I think that they have to communicate and be ready for the screen this week, and I think they're going to find a way to do it. I think they're going to find a way to fly around the field just like they did last time. I think Coach Babers and his staff, Coach Stannard and his defensive staff, I think they're finally starting to click, and it's crazy how just 1 week of 1 week, maybe two, of new coaching, and then all of a sudden things start clicking.
Now, on the other side, when you're looking at Coach Babers and the offense, this is a Louisville team that gives up almost 33 points a game. So you should be able to score on them.
Yes.
Okay, this is one of the worst defenses in the ACC. You had a lot of success running the ball. You didn't really use Tommy DeVito a ton in that game. What do you do offensively? Are you going to try and ground and pound?
I'm going to cut you off right there because it's so easy. Run the football. Run the football. Establish the running on these guys once again. 43 rushes last week. I'm looking for 40-plus rushing attempts this week as well. Then all of a sudden you have them playing on their heels. You get them to step up, throw it over the top, and play action, things like that. But it all comes down to running the football, establishing the run, taking over the line of scrimmage, and doing much better. Now, Syracuse, you said Louisville's defense hasn't really done great. Louisville's offense has done great. They've scored a ton of points. Syracuse's offense has potential to be great, especially when they're going real fast and they got the other team on their heels. But they have to figure out a way to slow things down in terms of you can line up quickly and run the play, but you want to run that clock, get your offense to stay on the field as long as possible, keep them off the field. 0 turnovers last week. Can't afford to turn the ball over, and you got to figure out a way to run the ball over and over again. Don't rely on Tommy DeVito to win you a game. I don't think he's in a position yet to win a game. I think Tommy DeVito's in a position to manage games. Mo Neal and this offensive line have to figure out a way to establish the run.
Now, and when you look at this, and a lot of the guys, they were excited after this game, obviously. They got a little pep in their step.
Mm-hmm.
It's still realistic for them to get to a bowl.
Yes.
They've got 2 games left. They need to win both of those. First, obviously, you've got to win this Louisville game before you worry about winning the Wake Forest game.
Right.
If you're in the locker room and you know that you have if you're a coach and you have no margin for error because you have to win this one, you have to win the second one to get yourself some bonus.
Oh, there goes Dumas. There he goes.
Oh, there he is.
I see you, my boy.
Jamil, we miss you, buddy. So, in this, you're playing with house money. You've got nothing to lose. You got everything to gain.
Correct.
Because you know if you lose, your season's going to end in another week.
Right.
But if you win, you still have a chance to play in December, get a bowl, get 4 extra weeks of practice, all that good stuff. How do you manage the locker room during the week of keeping them to the mindset of you have nothing to lose, you have everything to gain. There's still a lot riding on this. You can't be loosey-goosey, but you got to go out there like you did against Duke and just kind of play like you don't care.
Yeah, I think that it was great to see Syracuse last week, their defense all of a sudden playing with confidence and flying around the field. I think that you have to reestablish that during the practice week. You have to reestablish exactly what you want them to do. Give them some things that they're going to be successful at. Don't just give them things because you say, oh, this is what the defense needs to do. No, let's give them things that we know that they're going to be successful at, things that they're good at. Let's work on continued individual defensive line play from your pass rushers. Let's work on our defensive linemen really clogging up those holes, taking on double teams so that the linebackers can start making more and more tackles in the run game. I think they have to just go hard and go through the basics. And if they can be good at the basics, I think they always give themselves a chance. Louisville, this is a 50-50 game. Next week versus Wake Forest, that's a 50-50 game as well, although Wake Forest has played really great this season all over the place, especially inside the ACC schedule. But these are both 50-50 games they got coming up, and you got the pressure on you, but you got nothing to lose. They can get it done. 2 more weeks to figure out, do you belong in a bowl or not? And I'll tell you what, if you can't figure out a way on your own to get pumped up throughout the practice week and figure out a way to play well for the next 2 weeks, then you got a problem because you have a chance right now to play in a bowl game for the experience. But gosh, you don't want to say, oh, we won 4 games or 5 games. We were this close to getting to a bowl and we just couldn't get it done. These guys, these seniors, they got to get it done for the seniors and just for the university as a whole. I think that it's important for SU to go from 10 wins last year to all of a sudden at least get to a bowl this year. I think it's huge for recruiting, especially in the state.
Yeah, it's huge for the recruiting aspect, and you still got a lot of guys that they're looking at down the road. You've got a bunch of guys that have already committed to you that are still watching them, still thinking about what's going to happen next year. And you're right. The difference between 5-7 and 6-6 is huge because, as we said, if you go 6-6 and you get to the bowl's not till around Christmas time, between Christmas and New Year's, what have you.
Practice time.
You get extra 4 weeks of practice with all these young guys.
Yep.
You get 28 extra days. It doesn't sound like it's important, but that extra time, and you talk about you're a high school football coach. My son plays high school football. My son was a JV call-up. He got 2 weeks on varsity. Those 2 weeks that he was up there,
you learned so much.
Opened his eyes, and he learned so much. I know your kids at McQuaid, through this run, have learned so much. Just talk about how valuable that extra time is for these young guys who are not ready now, but need to be ready next year or the year after.
Right. When you have a month to prepare for one game, it's almost like everything's like a spring practice, really. So now all of a sudden, freshmen, redshirt kids that weren't getting a ton of snaps, all of a sudden, for at least that first week and a half that you're getting ready for the bowl game, you're going to all of a sudden, these young guys are going to start getting those practice snaps, start going against some of the ones and seeing exactly how fast it is out there when you're actually competing for some playing time. So it's going to be great for them to get the extra practices. It's going to be looked at like a spring practice. And it's also going to allow for, God willing, they go to a bowl. God, I hope they go to a bowl. But it's going to allow for them to let some of these guys that are injured get healthy, take a week or 2 off. They'll be there for practice, don't get me wrong, but their rep count will go down, and then the young guys will have an opportunity to step up, show what they can do. And then those last 2 weeks before they go to the bowl, that last week on campus, then they'll start revving it up, getting the starters, getting those guys back healthy. And then when they get to the bowl, to whatever city that they're going to go and say they're in Florida or something, they'll go to Orlando for a week and practice down there and get all those extra practices in as well. So the first 2 weeks, though, of getting ready for a bowl, those are the most important 2 weeks, especially for the younger kids on the team.
Or they could go to Boise in the Idaho Potato Bowl.
Hey, ball's ball, man. Take whatever you can get.
Bowl is a bowl. And more importantly, our executive producer, Gary Sadak, he needs to take us to the bowl if they get that far. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
We got to start selling more advertising.
We got to start selling. That's for sure. This game preview is brought to you by Ralph Honda. Ralph Honda ranked #1 in Western New York for overall customer satisfaction. Come see how we do Honda right at Ralph Honda. See the 2020 Hondas arriving daily at Ralph Honda, including the Odyssey, Pilot, and Civic. A short drive to West Ridge Road at Elm Grove. Online at ralphhonda.com. And again, if you want to advertise, if you want to send Andre, Jamil, and I and our executive producer Gary to a bowl game, you need to email Gary. You need to message him on our Facebook page.
Here's $1,000, Gary. Send him to a bowl.
rocksportsnet@gmail.com. If you want to advertise, get on, because we need a vacation around Christmas time.
It's been a long season.
It's been a long year, but Syracuse has got a chance. They've got 2 games left. They've got to win both to go bowling. 4-6, Could go to 6-6, but they got to go to 5-6 first.
Doesn't it feel good to finally be able to sit here and talk SU? I love talking SU football, but it just feels so good and feels refreshing to finally talk about SU football in a positive light. It's easy to come in here in the studio, talk about Tommy DeVito and Andre Cisco and the running backs and Trish Jackson and everybody catching touchdown passes when you win. Winning fixes everything, even if it's just week to week. Winning fixes everything. I can't wait to see exactly what Coach Babers and his staff have in store for us coming in the future.
This show is always fun, but it's so much more fun when Syracuse wins.
Yes.
So let's hope that we're back here.
Life is better. Watching
week.
SportsCenter is better when Syracuse wins. Oh, goodness.
Just want to remind you the Louisville game is at 4 o'clock. It's on the ACC network. It's at Louisville. Syracuse is an 8.5-point underdog. But, again, this is one of the worst defenses in the ACC. I'm saying that to give you guys some hope. We'll see you back here next Monday at 8 o'clock on rocksportsnet.com and the Rock Sportsnet Facebook page. Thank you so much for joining us. For Jamil Dumas, who's supposed to be right here, who's not here.
In spirit.
And Andre Fontenette, I'm Brendan McDaniels. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Monday.